Russia is not a real democracy.
Actually, it ceased to exist as democracy long ago, and right now it's not even a federal state, although according to our constitution, Russia is ruled under the principle of federalism, but with the annihilation of direct election of governors, which Vladimir Putin, who was the president at that time, introduced in 2004, actually immediately after their Beslan school siege, as a counter-terrorist measure, actually meant the abolition of democracy in Russia. Mm-hmm. It's in reality, this is a unitary state which is ruled by a small group of people who are mostly connected with federal security services, or those people who are loyal to them.
The idea we have is that the main problems are in Caucasus, in Chechnya, in Dagestan, but not in Moscow.
Well, you see, it's difficult. Yes, certainly the North Caucasus remains the most worrisome area of Russia. The level of violations there amount to the war against the people living there. Then there are armed resistance groups which are still active and which are still waging low-level guerrilla war against the authorities also remains a problem, despite all the claims of Moscow that they pacified the region. It has nothing to do with the process of real reconciliation. Their violence generated by the authorities generates more violence in response from those people who feel trapped. So it's a never-ending story, at least until the time when there are some people who are with the authorities who would be really eager to pacify the region by political means. But as for other regions of Russia, you see, Moscow is certainly Moscow in many ways is different from the North Caucasus. There is people at least are not disappeared, but cruelty of Russian penitentiary system, suppression of the basic right, which is freedom of assembly, and assaults at individual activists with the civil society groups also indicate that the authorities don't limit themselves in tactics against those who they regard as opposition. And the main problem in this context is the impunity, which those who violate the right actually enjoy. In many cases, when political activists, activists with trade unions have been assaulted, there have been clear indications to whom the investigation should go forward to. But at the same time, there have been no single case when such an assault was investigated efficiently. For instance, in Moscow in 2008 and 2009, two young people aged between 20 and 23 were beaten up by policemen who were identified as people with the Department to Combat Extremism, which is actually in many ways is used as a henchman against the opposition. And despite all the attempts to push the investigation into their deaths forward, it has brought no result. And in one particular case, the case of Yuri Chervochkin, who was beaten up by the police in December 2008, and then he died a month later. His mother, Nadezhda...
He was killed.
Yeah, he was killed. His mother, he was very young, he was 22. His mother, Nadezhda, is pushing the investigation. She is trying to... she's trying not to stop the investigation, although it's clear that it's hardly possible to hope that there will be any result. But still, she is trying to do the impossible. She has been supported by human rights groups, by Lyudmila Mikhailovna Alexeyeva, by people from the movement for human rights, to no avail. The investigation is still pending. The suspects are in their positions. There have been no attempt to bring them to accountability.
This impunity affects cases like the Anna Politkovskaya.
To some extent, yes. It's also one of the most horrible examples of the impunity. Although some people connected with the assassination of Anna Politkovskaya were detained and brought to trial, but as you might know, they were acquitted because the investigation failed to provide the jury with grounded proofs of their liability. And that's a problem, because if the investigation had been really aimed at establishing the truth, they would have provided the jury and the court with all the amount of collected evidence. They didn't do it. They didn't do it, and we assume that the reason is to shield those who actually were behind the orders to kill her.
What do you think about the position of the international community? The European Parliament has done some steps, has given a prize to the memorial institution. That's not enough for helping this fighting in defending the human rights in Russia?
It's already quite a lot. This kind of recognition still helps, and we can't but appreciate any attempt to bring some human rights groups and some activists with public light, because it still protects people. But at the same time, yes, there is a feeling that the international community could do a lot more, could be a lot more efficient if there was some political will to demand that Russia, for instance, comply with their own obligations or implement fully the rulings of the European Court on Human Rights. Even, for instance, with regard to Chechnya, the European Court has made more than 130 rulings on Chechen cases. And in all those cases, the European Court fixed the names of perpetrators. Certainly, the Russian Federation pays out compensations to the victims if they fail the case in Strasbourg, but they don't do anything to change the roots of the problems, and the roots are the impunity. And all those people who have been identified, even with the rulings of the European Court, are still in very high political and administrative and also military positions with the Russian Federation.